The rite of ascension happened once per generation, a ceremony where royal heirs officially claimed their right to rule before witnesses from across the galaxy. Princess Sera'lynn had prepared for this moment her entire life, studying every protocol until muscle memory replaced conscious thought. She'd also studied the prophecies, particularly the ones about soulmate indicators. Every Luminara bore the mark on their inner wrist, a bioluminescent pattern that remained dormant their entire lives unless they touched their destined match. Then it would ignite with radiance visible to all, declaring truth that couldn't be denied or faked. Most Luminara died without their mark ever glowing. True soulmates were extraordinarily rare, occurring perhaps once in a generation across their entire population. Sera'lynn had never expected hers to activate. She was destined for political marriage, not prophetic destiny. The ceremonial hall gleamed with ancient grandeur, packed with dignitaries from countless species. The human delegation was small but present, symbolizing fragile peace. Among them stood honor guards in dress uniform, including Corporal James Chen, who tried not to think about how much he hated ceremonial duty. The accident happened during the sacred procession. Someone in the crowd pushed forward too aggressively. Security responded, and in the resulting chaos, Princess Sera'lynn stumbled on her ceremonial robes. James reacted on pure instinct, catching her before she fell. Their hands touched, bare skin to bare skin for a fraction of a second. The light that erupted from Seralynn's wrist was blinding. Radiance flooded the ceremonial hall, casting sharp shadows across 3,000 assembled witnesses. Every Luminara present knew what they were seeing, the soulmate indicator activating, destiny declaring its choice. But the person whose touch had triggered it was human. The ceremony collapsed into chaos, and James, still holding the princess steady, had no idea he just changed the course of two civilizations with a moment of instinctive kindness. The Emperor's voice cut through rising chaos like a blade. "Release her." James immediately stepped back, but Seralynn's wrist continued blazing with light so intense it hurt to look at directly. 3 minutes, the traditional duration for genuine recognition, before it slowly faded to steady luminescence that would remain permanent. Everyone had seen. There was no denying what happened. Sera'lynn stared at her glowing mark with something like devastation. 3,000 years of Luminara history, and the soulmate indicator had never been wrong, but it had also never activated for a human before. The impossibility of both statements existing simultaneously threatened to fracture her understanding of everything she'd been taught. "Confine the human to quarters," the Emperor commanded, his carefully neutral tone not quite hiding his confusion. "Princess Sera'lynn will retire to her chambers. The ceremony is suspended pending religious consultation." The aftermath was swift. James was escorted away under guard, not arrested but definitely imprisoned. Human diplomats scrambled to understand what they'd witnessed. And Sera'lynn sat alone in her chambers, watching her wrist pulse softly with her heartbeat, a constant reminder of destiny's inconvenient declaration. The Imperial Council convened immediately. Religious scholars argued over ancient texts. Political advisors calculated consequences. Conservative factions called it contamination or corruption. Progressive voices suggested prophecy fulfilling itself in unexpected ways. Sera'lynn heard fragments of the debate through her door. "The mark has never been wrong, but a human is impossible. What if our understanding of compatibility has been too narrow? This threatens the Empire's religious foundations." When her father finally visited privately, he looked older than she'd ever seen him. 3,000 years, he said quietly, settling into the chair across from her. 3,000 years and the soulmate indicator has never falsely activated, but a human. "What if it's not false?" Sera'lynn interrupted. "What if destiny is trying to tell us something we don't want to hear?" The Emperor had no answer. Instead, he told her the Council's decision. She would meet with the human privately, in controlled circumstances. If the connection was genuine, they'd face the political consequences together. If somehow false, they'd find a way to nullify it. Sera'lynn looked at her glowing wrist and wondered if destiny could be reasoned with. The private meeting chamber was neutral territory, monitored but not interrupted. James entered expecting interrogation or worse. Instead, he found Princess Sera'lynn sitting calmly, her glowing wrist deliberately uncovered and visible. "Corporal James Chen," she said in flawless standard, "I owe you both an apology and an explanation." She explained soulmate indicators, the biological and spiritual significance, how her people believed the glow represented destiny's selection of perfect matches. She told him that in 3,000 years, the mark had never activated for a human before. Not because humans lack soulmates, she clarified, but because we assumed cross-species connections were impossible. Apparently, we were wrong. James tried to process this. So that glow on your wrist means we're, what, destined for each other? According to 3,000 years of prophecy and biology, yes. Her long ears angled downward. And now we both face impossible choices between duty and destiny. James should have been overwhelmed. Instead, he found himself really looking at her, the vulnerability hidden beneath royal composure, the fear she was trying so hard to conceal, the way her mark pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "What do you want?" he asked quietly. "Not your counsel, not tradition. What do you want, Sera'lynn?" The question broke something in her careful control. She admitted she'd spent her life preparing for duty, that personal desire was always secondary. But when their hands touched, she'd felt recognition, connection, the sense of finding something she didn't know she'd been missing. "I barely know you," she said, "but the mark doesn't lie, and I'm terrified of what that means." James made a decision that surprised them both. He extended his hand, palm up, an offering rather than demand. "Then let's get to know each other, properly. Before making decisions that affect millions, let's find out if destiny actually knows what it's talking about." Sera'lynn stared at his offered hand, at her glowing mark, at the choice between duty and destiny. Then slowly, deliberately, she reached out and took his hand. The mark flared brighter, and this time both of them felt it, warmth spreading from the point of contact, a rightness that transcended logic or tradition. "Well," James said softly, "I guess destiny has an opinion." Sera'lynn laughed despite everything, genuine, surprised, and maybe a little hopeful. Over the following weeks, under careful supervision and intense scrutiny, they met regularly. Conversations that started as awkward political necessity evolved into genuine connection. James told her about growing up on Earth, volunteering for diplomatic service, his love of ancient poetry. Sera'lynn shared what it meant to be born into destiny, to have every moment planned by prophecy, to wonder if you'd ever be seen as a person rather than symbol. They discovered compatibility beyond the mark's glow, shared humor, complementary perspectives, the ease of people who genuinely liked each other. But outside their private meetings, pressure built. Conservative factions called for the mark to be nullified, tradition honored. Progressive voices argued this was proof humans and Luminara could connect on the deepest level. The debate threatened to fracture the empire. The emperor summoned them both. He looked exhausted, worn by impossible decisions. "I've consulted every religious text, every precedent," he said tiredly, "and I've accepted an uncomfortable truth. The mark doesn't care about our politics. It declares truth regardless of convenience." He turned to James. "You are by our most sacred measure, my daughter's destined soulmate. I cannot deny that without denying 3,000 years of faith." Then to Sera'lynn. "But accepting it means challenging beliefs our people have held since before recorded history." Sera'lynn took James's hand, feeling her mark pulse with warmth. "Or it means destiny is offering us the chance to evolve, to grow beyond old prejudices. This isn't about denying tradition, Father. It's about understanding it more deeply." The emperor considered this. Finally, he nodded. "Then we move forward, slowly, carefully, but forward. Your bond will be recognized, but you'll both bear the burden of proving it genuine." The formal announcement sent shockwaves through both empires. Some celebrated it as destiny fulfilled. Others protested it as tradition betrayed. But Sera'lynn, standing beside James during the official ceremony, felt certainty. Not about politics or prophecy, about the person whose hand fit perfectly in hers. Still sure about this, James whispered as they faced assembled crowds. "Destiny chose you," she replied, her mark glowing steady and true. "But I chose you too. That's what makes it real." Their kiss sealed a bond rich